Our commitment and our conviction is that this legislation is going to be instrumental in solving cases that have gone cold or involve missing or unidentified individuals. We are calling the legislation Francine's Law in honor of Francine Frost, who was a missing person in Tulsa for more than 30 years before her grandson Corey's search on the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System discovered similarities between his grandmother's case and an unidentified person case from Muskogee County. Everybody in law enforcement will agree that cold cases are some of the most difficult and frustrating to address and to solve. It is one reason why, after I became Attorney General, I created the Criminal Justice Unit, led by Joy Thorpe, to begin to look at cold cases and similar cases that are among the most difficult to solve. We have recently used the multi-county grand jury to look into these cases. During our most recent session, grand jurors heard 3 cold cases and issued indictments on all 3, including a cold case homicide from 1984 that resulted in the defendant receiving a life sentence after being tried by Joy and her team in the Criminal Justice Unit. We believe that Francine's Law will be a valuable tool, as is the multi-county grand jury, connecting statewide law enforcement officials with the public by sharing information on these kind of cases. We've begun the process of discussing the barriers that exist with regard to implementing and perfecting this law with law enforcement, but we want to make this legislation as comprehensive as possible. The last thing that we want to do is impose further challenges to an already underworked or overworked and understaffed law enforcement cadre doing more than we already ask of them. That is why we will continue soliciting their input before we come up with a final version of the bill to present to the legislature. It is our goal that the requirements of this bill will impose no additional costs on law enforcement. But as state officials, we must do everything in our power to solve crimes and give families closure. We also believe that by resolving cases of missing persons and positively identifying remains of victims, it will provide us a fresh look at evidence that can lead to arrest, prosecution, and convictions of perpetrators. Public safety is and will always remain the first priority of the Office of Attorney General. Although we're still gathering information about draft legislation, I want to report to you that it is our principle that the requirement will be that all law enforcement agencies around the state will be expected to enter missing persons and unidentified remains into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System within 30 days of being reported missing. If the individual is missing under suspicious circumstances or is under 18 years of age, there's already a requirement that the missing person be entered into the system immediately. The NamUs database is already open to the public for searching cases, and anyone actually can input data on a missing friend or loved one. This database aims to empower family members and friends of missing loved ones with tools and resources to search for those who are missing. It's funded by the National Institute of Justice, and it's managed through a cooperative agreement with the University of North Texas Health Science Center. Mandating its use will, again, allow this information to go nationwide and allow both the public and law enforcement to work together to solve these cases. So, to further illustrate the effectiveness of the system and to provide you the background and inspiration for this new law, I want to ask Vicki Curl to come up and talk about her mom's case. Vicki.
My mother disappeared from Skaggs Alpha Beta grocery store parking lot in 1981. And there was nothing. There were no clues. Nothing, absolutely nothing. In 2015, my son, after searching 4 days a week till 2 in the morning for several years, put in a report or a search on Google for skeletal remains. That report came up, and the NamUs file of my mother's missing and an unidentified remains report was filed in NamUs. The unidentified remains were found in 1983, 23 months after my mother disappeared in Muskogee County. We began making calls. Angela Berg found the file and entered it into NamUs in 2013. I have to thank Angela Berg for all of her work, District Attorney Orville Loge of Muskogee, and Vernon Martin, the late Vernon Martin of Green Hill Cemetery. There were 2 exhumations and a year-long wait for DNA confirmation. It was 35 years when we received the positive identification that it was my mother's remains. I can't begin to describe to you the emotions, the relief, the peace, the heartache and heartbreak, but more than anything, the peace of picking up her remains from the Oklahoma Medical Examiner's office. My sons and I went. Orville Loge drove up from Muskogee to meet us, and we brought her remains home to McPherson, Kansas, where we live. She was buried in a private family service. I walk in the cemetery all the time now. I wasn't a cemetery person before. I am now. It brings me great peace. My sister committed suicide 17 months after my mother's disappearance, unable to cope with the loss. She's also buried next to my mother. That is why I began lobbying in my family for Francine's Law. NamUs is the vehicle which puts the 2 reports together. Without NamUs, my mother's missing report would be here, her unidentified remains would be here. There would be no way for them to come together. For 2 reasons, I'm lobbying for this law. Number 1, to honor the memory of my mother. Number 2 is to help the missing families in the state of Oklahoma. I was born and raised here. My mother was born and raised here. It is my heartbeat state. I don't believe in this. In 1981, it was an unfortunate time to disappear. I believe now there's no reason people need to wait that long for the information to come together. Thank you.